Sabaidi. Good afternoon. The Honorable Director General of Lao National Treasury, Madam Wanporn Pumasorn. The Honorable Director General of Treasury Indonesia, Mr. Astera, Primanto, Bhakti, our permanent speakers and moderators. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here at the Grand View Hall for the agenda of Treasury Seminar on optimizing government cash management for sustainable development. My name is Vasana Kampanit. I will take turn for opening remark, and I also have my friend Lam Punsap. He will take turn for closing remark. It is and my honor for me to be your master of ceremony for today's seminar. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the main agenda, may we now invite the Director General of National Treasury of Laos, Madam Wanporn Pumasorn, to deliver her welcoming remark to the event. The time is yours. Khor Hien Seun.
Good afternoon, Mr. Primanto, Director General of Treasury of Indonesia, Head of the Delegates, ladies and gentlemen, joining the seminar, ASEAN SEC, IMF expert, Luang Prabang, Provincial Treasury, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, joining face-to-face and joining online. Let me say Sabaidi, or good afternoon. Welcome everybody to the Treasury Seminar for the afternoon here, where we will be hearing the experience in terms of the cash management from Lao PDR, Indonesia, and also the international practices of cash management by an IMF expert. As you are well aware that the assessment of the mapping of the functions of cash management and other functions in the treasury in other ASEAN countries are in charge, particularly in terms of general accounting, and the main issue is about cash management as well. And for cash management, it's an important function per the normal functions that the Treasury Department performs. And we believe that the panel presentation, based on what we agreed this morning for Lao PDR Indonesia international practices, we will further deep dive this issue, particularly the learning from member countries in our official launch in September. And on behalf of the chair, we would like to encourage the participants and the speakers to actively attend and discuss to ensure that we can draw lessons learned from various countries. Despite the limited time we have, I wish that we'll have a successful discussion. Thank you.
Madam Wanporn Pumasorn, for your warm welcoming remark. Ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda will be the opening remark from the Director General of Treasury Indonesia to the Honorable Mr. Astera Primanto Bhakti. The stage is yours, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Treasury Seminar as a subsequent event of high-level meeting on the establishment of the ASEAN Treasury Forum. Before I proceed, I would like to extend my appreciation to my colleague, Madam Wanporn, Director General National Treasury of Lao PDR. Since this very seminar is held thanks to the support and collaboration from the National Treasury of Lao PDR. I also would like to thank our speaker and moderator for making this time to this seminar today. Madam Boualuengkhin Douangsavanh, Deputy Director General, National Treasury of Lao PDR, Pak Nur Faisal Ahmad, Director of Cash Management, DG Treasury Indonesia, Mr. Holger van Eden, Technical Assistant Officer for Fiscal Sector, Fiscal Affairs Department, IMF, and also Mr. Sopak Sone Silapet, News Anchor for National TV of Lao PDR. My fellow ASEAN Treasury colleagues, I believe we cannot speak treasury and cash management without having a larger picture on the current world economic state. As we experienced back in 2020 pandemic, all government had no choice but to mobilize most of their financial resources to save their people, live, and prevent their economies from falling deeper. Now in 2024, as noted during February G20 meeting in Sao Paulo, Brazil, the chances are high for the global economy toward a soft landing, indicated by the resilient growth despite the varies across countries and regions. But compared to the prior COVID pandemic, this global economic growth is still below the average economic growth from 2000 to 2019. On the other hand, the World Economic Forum has projected that uncertainty may continue to cloud the global economy outlook for 2024. This is highly contributed by the increase of geopolitical tension that cause disruption on global supply chain, higher volatility in commodity price. Fortunate for ASEAN countries, economic performance is still forecast positive. This due to robust domestic consumption, which become the main fuel for economic performance for ASEAN countries. It is projected the economic growth for 2024 among ASEAN countries varies from 2.9% to 6.2%. On the medium term, expanding domestic consumption will still be dominant factor to boost economic growth in several countries in ASEAN. Expanding electronic production, auto manufacturing, and tourism industry is the medium term will shape the economic growth in ASEAN region countries. Unfortunately, we also witness geo-economic fragmentation would accelerate this year, indicated by rising of protectionism and localization and strengthening the bloc among countries. If not addressed properly, this phenomenon might worsen the inequality and widen the gap between North-South development for the upcoming years. Again, those challenges, we as the government treasurers have to strategic role to refocus our fiscal consolidation toward a stronger budget posture that might resist any upcoming crisis, while at the same time revisit our taxing policies to increase internal revenue and formulate a better quality spending that align with the sustainable development priorities. Not to mention, we need also to maintain our debt management policy to finance budget deficit and manage liquidity while maintaining the risk low and keeping the market confident. As you might experience yourself, being a government treasurer means you must ensure that the country could afford its responsibilities at any given time, while also optimizing any opportunity to gain financial benefit through placement, short-term investment, and other financial instruments. Therefore, this seminar will explore one of the core functions of the Treasury on how to optimize government cash management to support sustainable development. This topic will be discussed from two perspectives, from the experience of Lao PDR Treasury and Indonesian Treasury, and also from the international best practice from IMF. Government cash management require efficient and sound risk management practices, especially in time of crisis. We have seen during the COVID-19 pandemic. Government with solid cash management practices were better equipped to weather the financial storm brought on by the pandemic. As part of the treasury and fiscal management policy, cash management must support the counter-cyclical role in time of crisis. When tax revenue declines significantly due to the slowing down economic activities, government are expected to spend more from the budget to help their people from the adverse impact of the pandemic. Expanding spending on public health, social assistance, and economic incentive are examples of the priorities of any government at that time. Navigating those periods of uncertainties, all government must have an accurate daily monitoring and reliable forecasting for their cash and to support decision making and to ensure that every financial policy is taken effectively and efficiently. The lesson learned from the pandemic was that government need an integrated and interconnected cash management system that could provide comprehensive information about the government's revenue and spending for the whole fiscal year, so the policymaker can estimate the short-term available fund and the potential temporary idle cash. The government will rely on this important calculation before issuing government securities or withdrawing debt to fulfill the need of cash, or the other way around, making a short-term investment to optimize their cash management. Ladies and gentlemen, this seminar aims to provide a platform for both the esteemed speaker and the participant to engage and share our valuable perspective and experiences on how cash management is handled in its respective country during normal circumstances or even under period of crisis. I encourage all participants to engage in the discussion and actively share your knowledge. Your insight will surely be invaluable to strengthening cash management practices within the ASEAN region. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Astera Primanto Bhakti, for your insightful remarks. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I believe this is the time for us to move on to the main agenda. There will be 3 speakers in this seminar. First, Madam Boualuengkhin Douangsavanh, Deputy Director General of National Treasury of Laos. Second, is Mr. Luang Prabang, Director of Cash Management, DG Treasury, Indonesia. Third, who will join us virtually, Mr. Holger Van Eden, Technical Assistant Officer for Fiscal Sector, Fiscal Affairs Department, IMF. While our moderator for this seminar will be Mr. Supakson Silapes, news anchor from National TV of Lao PDR, who will lead the panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Supakson Silapes. The stage is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Supakson Silapes from Lao National Television News Broadcaster. But today I'm honored to be your moderator for today's seminar session here, and I hope you had a wonderful time at your visit here in Luang Prabang. I hope you had not only you accomplish your task here, but also enjoy your visit here in our World Heritage City. Once again, good afternoon, everybody. And as part of the objective of the ASEAN Treasury Forum, which is to And of course, the high-level meeting and Treasury seminar is to strengthen Treasury collaboration in ASEAN. And of course, what better to do it is to nourish and better cooperation among ASEAN member states around Treasury and public financial management through knowledge sharing on benchmark fiscal policies and practices, and provide framework and guidance to enhance management, as well as supporting the ASEAN Finance Ministers by improving management practices and collaboration, coordination between members and in government financial sectors, as well as enhance information sharing on treasury and public financial management. And of course, for this seminar, for today's seminar, which is the theme is the optimizing government cash management for sustainable development, and to engage in hands-on learning and collaborative environment. The session will focus on specific problems in the treasury and public financial management sectors that members collectively consider as a major issue and to consider for a collective outcome. Ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned, we have three presenters for today. We have representatives from the Lao PDR, Indonesia, and IMF. First, I'd like to invite on the stage Madame Boualuengkhin, Douangsavanh, Deputy Director General of the National Treasury Ministry of Finance. And of course, the second person is Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmed, Director of the State Cash Management, Directorate General of Treasury of Indonesia, Ministry of Finance. And of course, the third person from IMF is Mr. Holger van Eden, who will be joining us online via Zoom. He will be speaking later on today. And now I'd like to, before we begin, I'd like to first introduce, for the session, we have all of our speakers will have 15 minutes each. And we will start with Madame Boualuengkhin Douangsavanh, the Deputy Director of the National Treasury of Laos, where she will be speaking on cash management in the Lao National Treasury. Ms. Boualuengkhin has worked at the National Treasury Ministry of Finance since 1999 and was appointed as Deputy Director of the Division Administrative Organization, and then she became Deputy Director of the Budget Expenditure Inspection Division, as well as later on she held position as Director of Planning and Cash Management Division, as well as Director of Operation Division, and was appointed finally as the Deputy Director of the National Treasury in 2023, with responsibility of leading and supervising the organizational work, planning, finance, and cash management. I give the floor to Madame Boualuengkhin to present.
Thank you, Sobat, everybody. Head of the delegates, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants joining this event today, joining face-to-face and joining online. My name is Boualuengkhin Douangsavanh, Deputy Director General of the National Treasury. It is my great pleasure to be here to speak before you and share the experiences of the Lao National Treasury under the topic of cash management today. Regarding cash management in Lao PDR, we're still at the very starting stage, at the primitive stage, based on the experience and practices by other ASEAN member states, because our modern system has not been able to accommodate the consolidation of all sources of cash of the National Treasury in Lao PDR. Right now, the National Treasury is under the development of our modernization system, particularly what we call FMIS, that can be integrated with other revenue department, the Bank of Lao PDR systems, and other commercial banks in a full-fledged manner. In my presentation today, ladies and gentlemen, I will spend about 15 minutes as the organizing committee has allocated to me, which would comprise of 4 main topics here. The legal framework, number 2, cash management in our treasury system, number 3, challenges, number 4, ways forward. Regarding the legal framework that we have the decree on National Treasury number 259. We have the ministerial decisions on the operation and establishment of the National Treasury number 2057. We have the instruction on the management of cash number 3153 as our legal basis. Regarding the cash management in our system, the two sources, the first one is the state budget sources. Number two is the state organization deposit. For the cash budget is from the collection from taxes, duties, asset revenue, dividends from state-owned enterprises. But for the deposit of government organization, we have the deposit of the various spending units, other semi-financially autonomous agencies, the state funds, and also the state-owned enterprises. Regarding the cash management for the National Treasury, we have been implementing as following, particularly the consolidation of all the source of funding in the banking system. So all of the bank accounts that is open in the Bank of Lao PDR and commercial banks. Regarding the revenue, transaction, and expenditure, we implemented through the commercial banks about 90% of transactions, and we have done about 10% through the Bank of Lao PDR. In terms of the monitoring of our bank account, we do it through what we call GFIS system. Regarding the cash forecasting, the revenue departments will rely that on their own annual revenue collection plan, and then they will develop the quarterly plan, monthly plan, even a weekly plan in terms of cash forecasting, particular revenue collection. And we also work together in order to collect all of the estimate revenue collection as our cash management practice in order to forecast our spending on a weekly and monthly basis, and that is our practice. Regarding cash flow management, we rely on the payment proposal by the spending units that we monitor through the GFIS system. We develop a cash allocation plan on a monthly basis, weekly basis, and we also arrange that based on chronological order submitted to the National Treasury. And there's a timeline for the payment checking and the disbursement around 5 to 7 days, except priority payments of the government, particularly the payroll, benefit payment, domestic and external debt payments. These are the priority payments where we will make the payment as immediately as possible. Regarding fund mobilization, our fund mobilization, we basically issue our treasury bills. Right now we have issued through the Bank of Lao PDR. We do it through the interest rate auction. We do it once a week in issuing these T-bills, treasury bills through the Bank of Lao PDR. And in the past, we also have issued the 2-year bills, 3-year bills. But currently, the one that is over 1-year bill is under the Department of the Public Debt Management, and therefore the National Treasury only focus on the short-term bills that is under 1-year term of maturity. Number 5, we also do borrowings, short-term borrowing in order to ensure cash management. When we have a lack of liquidity, the National Treasury borrow from the Bank of Lao PDI in order to manage our cash. And when we make the borrowing, we need to pay within that fiscal year per the law on the Bank of Lao PDI number 47/NA, which stipulates that the Ministry of Finance may make borrowing from the Bank of Lao PDR on a limit of not over 20% of the annual revenue if we lack that liquidity. So this is the practice that the National Treasury of Lao PDR has engaged at a very basic level. However, we are still faced with a number of challenges in our practice. The first challenge is the revenue forecast that is not as accurate. Right now, we are still doing in a way that we reach out to each other through phone calls, information through WhatsApp, but it's not done in a systematic manner in terms of submitting the revenue forecast by the revenue collection departments, where they submit it to us based on their quarterly annual plan and monthly plan and weekly plan. And when we have the estimate revenue collection, but when they actually execute the collection, the collected revenue might not match the forecasted number. For some week, it may be over the target. In some weeks, some months, it may be under the target of the forecast. And this is also remains a challenge for the National Treasury, because when we see the revenue figure and then we come up with a payment plan, right? But if it's not based on what we are expected to be able to collect, so that will be a challenge for the spending. The second one is the Treasury Single Account, TSA. The National Treasury has started this for years. However, we have not succeeded, frankly speaking. We have not succeeded. Currently, we haven't really consolidated all of the source of cash in the Bank of Lao PDR yet. We issued a notification to close the deposit accounts, bank accounts of the spending units or the budgetary units, and we asked them to open and to manage at the treasury system. So that's what we have completed, the very first stage. However, that consolidation of the treasury single account is still a difficult undertaking, because the National Treasury at the central level and at the subnational level still have commercial bank accounts, several bank accounts that we have not been able to consolidate at the day and at the Bank of Lao PDR yet. The third challenge is a short-term investment that we have not implemented yet. The use of the idle cash to invest. Particularly, we still lack modern tools in order to manage treasury. Even though that we have this idle cash balance, but we have not been able to make that short-term investment because our analysis capacity has not really been ensured yet. The fourth challenge is the integrations of the Governmental Financial Information System, or GFIS, that is not done in a comprehensive manner yet. Right now, we rely on the GFIS for decades. However, such a system cannot be upgraded yet, particularly the interoperability with the banks, with the financial institutions. We still face with difficulties in terms of compiling the real-time revenue data. This GFIS cannot capture that real-time data. Regarding the execution of our spending, we still face with the difficulties, particularly reconciliation of the transaction with the commercial bank accounts. Particularly reconcile daily activities. 70% of them is done manually. We have not used an automatic system to do so. And therefore, having recognized these challenges, coupled with our practices, and these four challenges, we have come up with some ways forward. Particularly two main things. Number one, we will develop the integrated financial management information system, what we call FMIS, to ensure that it can be interoperable with other bank systems, particularly the Bank of Lao PDR and the commercial banks. That we believe that the development of this FMIS will help to raise the profile and to ensure that we can modernize our treasury system to be benchmarked to other ASEAN countries. The second direction, we will continue to work with the World Bank experts in order to undertake the Treasury Single Account efforts, or TSA, to ensure that we can centralize all of the source of cashes at the Bank of Lao PDR with the technical assistance and advisory service in terms of TSA by the World Bank expert. Where the first step is that we have explored and come into agreement that we will plan to centralize that at the headquarters of the commercial banks first, at the first initial step. Then the second step, we will explore how to centralize that at the Bank of Lao PDR. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our practical experiences in terms of cash management of the National Treasury of Lao PDR. And the important things today is that we want to learn from the experiences, from the practices in Indonesia, and from the expert from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, so that we can learn and use the lessons learned and apply them in our undertaking of cash management successfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Boualuengkhin, for giving us that comprehensive overview about the Lao PDR situation, especially in terms of the Lao National Treasury management and management of cash. And of course, from Lao PDR, we move into to Indonesia. I'd like to introduce Mr. Nur Faisal Ahmed, Director of State Cash Management, Directorate General of Treasury, Indonesia Ministry of Finance. Mr. Faisal is the Director of the Cash Management, and his role is responsible for formulating and implementing policies in state cash management. Prior to this, he was the head of Regional Treasury Office in Maluku. He holds a Bachelor of Accounting from the University of North Sumatra and a master's degree in economics from the University of Birmingham and a PhD in public policy from Flinders University. And for this, Mr. Faisal will be talking about Indonesia cash management, enhancing the roles. I give the floor to Mr. Faisal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, good afternoon all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It is my honor to speak here to share my experience in managing cash in Indonesian context. Please next. Yes. In the morning, we talk about organization unit in each treasury in all ASEAN countries and cash management unit as part of DG Treasury Indonesia. So when we talk about cash management, actually mainly how we receive, how we keep, and also disburse about cash. And of course, we have to provide cash anytime government operation is in progress, right? So actually, as IMF also mentioned about 3 pillars. The first pillars, we try to create a system, a payment system and receipt system. Of course, part will be utilized here. And also, when we consider the system, we also set bank account, particularly in central bank. That's why we also apply treasury single account here. And actually, we in some seminar we also discussed about AFMIS in Indonesia, and in this pillar we quite happy at the current progress, but of course room for improvement still available. And then the second pillar concerning the accuracy of projection. Of course, it needs cooperation with all units within Ministry of Finance, how they can manage or maybe create information in terms of yearly, quarterly, monthly, and also daily here. So based on this information, when we can receive money and disburse the money, we can figure out whether the money is still enough or maybe alarm in the system. And we also consider to set cash buffer. I mean that what kind of minimum cash should we have in our pocket. And then, of course, it includes the excess of cash buffer. We inform this to other unit. It can be used to for investment and also to, let's say, to reduce the issuance of government bond. And I will talk more about the third pillar, efficiency, because you can see that maybe in some countries or maybe in ASEAN also, budget is using deficit system. I mean that government will issue government bond, but you can see that some of cash in, let's say, in cash management unit, it's from the issuance of government bond. Government, of course, there's a cost when issues the government bond, and we put this cash in treasury single account in central bank, but actually they're still carried negative cost when we put all money in central bank. So that's why actually how the time about optimizing cash management, we will talk more about this efficiency. Okay, next. Yes, Indonesia tried to apply treasury dealing. Not all countries choose this mechanism, but we decide to develop treasury dealing rooms to optimize our cash. It is long journey, even though first transaction in 2016, but the progress it start from 2006. Yeah, we have to learn from other countries and then from experts, including from banking sectors, and we have to prepare some regulation. Of course, the capacity of human resources, and also both the system as well as the backbone for transaction. And in 2016, we start to first transaction, particularly in when we settle placement from our cash in each partner. I mean that partner in commercial banks, particularly Indonesia state-owned banks as a partner when we place our money in outside central bank. And not only the placement in commercial bank, we also apply outright transaction, but it started in 2018, but small amount. Then because when we discuss with IMF, they consider that it's not a good opportunity to cash management need to increase this transaction. So we focus on reverse repo transaction. So we start reverse transaction in 2019, and it increased in nowadays. But lately, not only let's say conventional transaction, but also like sukuk Sharia transaction. We do first Sharia reverse repo transaction in 2023. But later I would like to explain when this dealing room support economic recovery programs in 2022, 20 and 2021 here. Next. I would like to explain the current progress from our treasury dealing rooms. Of course, based on our agreement with central bank, we only put our money approximately of 5 trillion, approximately 0.32 billion USD in the market. So we use Bloomberg AUPD for platform for bidding for system. And as you can see that for money placement on private banks, we do not use collateralized taxation in a banking system, tenor between 7 to 21 days. And in reverse repos, of course, we have to select 20 series of most liquid and least volatile fixed rate government bonds as collateral. Collateral become issue when we put money outside the central bank. And then, of course, we put haircut years, 5% from the transaction. And in if we see in Sharia reverse repo sukuk transaction here, it's quite similar, 20 series of most liquid and least volatile fixed rate Sharia government bonds, and with haircut higher 6.5 for this transaction. You can see that let's say in 2023, the transaction is getting bigger and bigger. For money placement, we do 31 transaction with average bid to coverage 3.1 trillion in transaction, and you can see that it can support 122 BPS higher remuneration than if we put in central banks. Counterparts limited only for state-owned banks, and both reverse repo more active than money placement, 39 times in 2023. Of course, still small space here, only 2.3 trillions average bid to coverage ratio, but we will develop a reverse repo in the next future. So you can see that we have some challenges about the relaxing time from central bank, only 5 trillion rupiahs, and then in the future we will try to make it bigger. And we have issue about the same-day settlement will be our innovation in the future, and then try to relax the shares of government bond, no restriction of on shares of bond, including try to reduce haircut 5% and 6.5% because all is a government bond. And of course, the counterpart will try to increase the number as well in terms of money placement and also for reverse repo transaction. And others, because we think that if we can do that frequent reverse repo transaction, we can create like yield curve in the market. So that's why about the system infrastructure, we try to adopt as well from a stock exchange platform. So the information is available for the public. Okay, then next. Yeah. And then our experience when COVID-19 pandemic, I think is provide good experience for us. Actually, when banks were suffering from liquidity shortage due to problem from debitors, so when the government put the money to these banks, so it will support banks still can disburse credit to all state all institutions. So you can see that on the bottom, when we put approximately 5 billions USDs in the market, it can support credit expansion around 29.18 billions, approximately 6 times, and it support 5.5 million small medium enterprises receive liquidity support. Of course, when we put this money at this time, we have to consider risk management and accountability. That's why we have to coordinate with Financial Service Authority, because they will decide which bank needs support. And we need information from this institution about the healthiness of each bank. And of course, about the central bank, because this bank puts some reserve account at central bank. So it will be collateral if something happen with when we put placement in commercial bank. So we have agreement with central bank if something happen with our placement. And also about Indonesian Deposit Insurance Corporation, it also provide a guarantee for loan principal in case of default. And we coordinate with Indonesian National Government Internal Auditor, because they have to see whether the money disbursed as the main purpose as well. So next, maybe Mr. Holger will explain about the best practice, but based on our experience, we try to just our path for the future. I mean that, of course, we will still apply treasury single account in the middle, but maybe we'll try to modify treasury single account. I mean that the main account will be in central bank, but we also some investment placement account in some commercial bank. I mean that it will support us when, let's say, in the left side, actually, of course, mainly we put our money in central bank. And then, let's say, we set certain amount of money should stay in central bank. But we can also manage how the flow cash come to central bank and also cash out from central bank, in terms of when we receive money, and then in terms of when we disburse money. I think we still can manage this money efficiently here. And then about the active cash management, of course, our discussion with central bank, they will support us if we can increase reverse repo transaction. So with public institution, with the bank, we will increase the number of transaction of short-term investment in commercial bank. And you can see that maybe like Madam Yot expand about the scope of the SA. Of course, Indonesia also limited with not connected to local government, to sui generis organization in Indonesia. So we think that we still connect to excess liquidity in local government. That's why we connect them with short-term financing. They can put their money in our bank account in central banks. And then if this institution, let's say sui generis, has a problem in liquidity, they can borrow from us, but of course with collateralized short-term investment. I think that's, we hope that in 1 to years later we can apply this more effectively. Okay, then next. Maybe in some, of course, cash management in Indonesia still evolving because we see our coordination with central bank and also with others entities like local government, sui generis as well, how we can use cash as sovereign effectively, and then how we can manage the flow of fund from let's say taxpayer to central bank, but also from central bank to beneficiaries. And then of course we need, like I said, that when we the flow of treasury dealing rooms, it needs special skills. That's why we create dedicated unit in cash management and improve the knowledge regularly. And I said that close coordination is key when we develop cash management system in Indonesia with central bank, with other institution, if you would like to expand not only about cash management, but also to support sustainable development in each country. I think that's all from my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal, for giving us that detailed information about the works in Indonesia in terms of cash management in the Treasury, through the Treasury Working Coordination. And as we can see, the theme between the two countries, Laos and Indonesia, is that there are some progress, but at the same time, there are some challenges and some areas that need to be focused to develop more. For our third speaker, Mr. Hugo van Eden, hopefully we can give some more insight from the international experience or best practice. Mr. Hugo van Eden is IMF's resident public financial management advisor in Cambodia, attached to the Ministry of Economy and Finance. He's an editor of the IMF Public Financial Management blog. Previously, he's a IMF's regional public finance management advisor for Southeast Asia, based in Bangkok. Before, he was Deputy Division Chief of the IMF's Fiscal Affairs Department, where he led IMF technical assistance and training for over 50 countries around the world, with focus on Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean and Eastern Europe. And with his areas of expertise includes budget preparation, public investment management, fiscal risk management, budget and fiscal responsibility law, treasury management, financial management information systems. And during his time as in the Fiscal Affairs Department, he's able to lead his leadership role in developing IMF research and board papers on reform and budget institution, public management, fiscal transparency, and climate change. And before he joined IMF, he was the leader and project coordinator for international consultancy and an economic journalist and editor for the financial consultant for global accounting firm. And he started his career in the Treasury of Dutch Ministry of Finance. And I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Holger hello, Mr. Holger. Are you here with us? Can you hear you?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for the excellent introduction. Maybe the host can clarify if I need to share my presentation or that they will upload my presentation. Hello?
Hello, maybe presentation is
Can
up.
you hear me?
Yeah, maybe we can IT increase the volume in the room, please. Thank you.
Oh, so you have my presentation. That's great. Can we go to the next slide? So I'm sorry I cannot join you in Luang Prabang, but I know the city well. It's a beautiful location. So sorry that I've missed going there.
Mr. Holger, could you speak closer to the microphone, sir? We have a hard time hearing you at the meeting room.
I want to thank the ASEAN Treasury Forum for inviting me. It's a pleasure to talk about treasury management. I have worked with several treasuries in the ASEAN region, and I wanted to discuss today active cash management, as that's the kind of next phase that we see coming for a lot of treasuries as they have been progressing with developing their treasury single account and their cash forecasting. So let me go to the next slide, please. So I'll give a brief introduction on what active cash management is, some of the approaches and instruments, and the prerequisites, and finish with some concluding remarks. Next slide, please. So the overall cash management objective has already been stated. It's ensuring that cash is always available to facilitate the execution of the budget. That's the most important thing for the cash managers to focus on. But there are several other objectives as well, namely trying to be as economical as possible on the cash on hand, saving costs and reducing risks, managing surpluses and deficits as efficiently and effectively as possible, and also to interact as best they can with debt management and monetary policy and with financial market. And especially the first two, the debt management and the monetary policy interaction, is something that cash managers have to spend quite a bit of time developing relationships with their counterparts to function well together in the cash management framework. So we distinguish four phases. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We've distinguished four phases in cash management development. The first one is the development of the treasury single account, and that's usually quite a long process because there are a lot of balances outside the Ministry of Finance central account usually, and these need to be integrated either through overnight sweeping or through actual integration in a single account. Can be at the central bank, which is our preference, but can also be at one commercial bank. In some countries they do that. Developing forecasting capacity is the second phase. And then the third and the fourth phase, next slide, please. Next slide, phase, is what we call rough tuning and fine tuning of cash management. Rough tuning is the first, the issue of treasury bills and trying to smooth somewhat the daily cash balance. There will still be a large fluctuation. And then the phase four, what we see in many OECD countries, is when the cash balance actually drops to almost zero. So then the forecasting is very good, and the amount of financial instruments at the disposal of government is very good. And then we see that countries actually manage to reduce their cash balance to almost zero. And in some developing countries and emerging market countries, it's it's sometimes still a couple of percentage of GDP. So that change in how much cash on hand is necessary for the business of government really reduces very much as cash management develops. So if we go to the next slide, what is active cash management? It's targeting a low and stable cash balance in the TSA through the active use of short-term borrowing and investment instruments while limiting financial risks. And if we look, next slide, please. If we look at the kind of cash balance that countries target, you can usually distinguish between what we call a transaction buffer and a market buffer. The transaction buffer is to meet the daily variations in payments and receipts. And the market buffer is the kind of the security blanket that you have to take care of important disruptions of the market, what we call market freezes. Can happen from time to time. And the Treasury also has to be prepared to carry the budget transaction over such a period. So there's always needs for a certain buffer on top of the transaction buffer. Next slide, please. So the aim of active cash management is to adjust the TSA balance to be almost zero during the year. And this is an intervention based on a number of issuance of T-bills. I see that we've already gone to the next slide. So if we look at the benefits of active cash management, of course, it's timely. Can we go to slide number? Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, I've already discussed this one. The next slide, please. So what are the benefits of active cash management? Of course, timely payments by the government, no interest cost on late payments, lower financing costs because there's less cash to finance in the government. There is less pressure also on central banks' monetary policy. One of the things that we have to convince central banks of is that actually a stable TSA balance actually benefits the central banks and reduces fluctuations in bank liquidity. And active cash management, the introduction of T-bills and of other instruments like repos and reverse repos has a very beneficial effect on developing the money market with much greater depth to financial markets in countries. So what we see, if we can go to the next slide, if we move to active cash management, it's basically going away from situations of maintaining large cash surpluses and also of restraining cash payments, what we would call cash rationing, moving over to a situation that you can keep much smaller cash balances and assure that the budget is executed continuously. Next slide, please. So rough tuning versus fine tuning is just a question of how active are you in the money market? How many interventions do you have? You know, in OECD countries would intervene in the market almost daily to tweak their cash balances. In a rough tuning situation, we're talking about, you know, a monthly or bi-weekly interventions, issuance of T-bills mostly to smooth the cash balance. And usually instead of a target cash balance, there's a cash balance zone, which we try to achieve. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this again is an example of an issuance of T-bills that will lift the cash balance in the right hand upper corner up to a more sustainable level thanks to the interventions of T-bills early in the year. You see quite large fluctuations in revenue intake in a lot of countries, and that can be accommodated by T-bill issues. Okay, next slide, please. So if we look at international experiences, there are countries which want to keep a positive balance at all times, and there are countries which want to keep a deficit at all times, sometimes which is then financed through central bank overnight borrowing. But I think the majority of countries have a surplus approach. Of course, they try to place that surplus at the end of the day in an overnight facility, either at the commercial bank or at the central bank. So next slide, please. So if we look at the instruments that are used in cash management, I won't go into them, but the T-bills is the most common instrument. Repos and reverse repos are in development in ASEAN countries, but require quite a bit of development and legal basis and so on. But there are other instruments as well that can serve a purpose. But the most important part is to start, I think, with the T-bill issuance. And this has to be discussed with the central bank because, of course, issuance of T-bills will perhaps interfere with issuance of central bank paper. Okay, so I'll end with the last slide, please. The typical challenges that we see in emerging markets. Of course, the main issue is perhaps that revenues are not as they are forecasted. So that can lead to needs to borrow extra or to mitigate revenue shortfalls. High volatility in revenues can be an issue, and some of it can be addressed through the tax administration by spreading tax collection in a certain way. Unreliable cash forecasts, that's a major topic that we provide technical assistance on. If you can't forecast your cash flow accurately, you cannot target your cash balance. So that is an important thing. The narrow range of financial instruments and shallow or non-existent money market, that's now changing in most of the ASEAN countries, but there are still a number of ASEAN countries with what we call a very shallow money market where there's very little issuance of short-term instruments. And then we see that as a consequence that countries retain quite high cash balances. And finally, the coordination and the reluctance of the central bank to agree with cash management, with active cash management. That's been an issue in several countries, including, I might say, Indonesia, where the central bank has to come on board that this is actually beneficial for monetary operations as well. I'll keep it at that. That's just a short introduction on active cash management. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Hoger. Thank you very much. As now we just have our three speakers have presented, and thank you very much again for each of our speakers who managed the time very well, actually. So we have more time for group discussions. And right now, we open to the floor to our participants today for some questions to our speakers. Anyone have questions? Up there from the back, from the Lao PDR. Please present the mic.
Sabai everybody. My name is Viang Son from the National Treasury of Lao PDR. I do have a question for the Indonesia speaker, two questions in fact, and I have one question for the IMF presenter. For the Indonesian presenter, allow me to ask if you could explain further, in the case where your local treasuries that who can borrow short-term liquidity financing, right? What kind of instruments should they use? Is it called T-bill? Or is there like a special borrowing arrangement? Or what is the condition of repayment? Or they must borrow only from the national treasury only? So that's my first question, sir. Second question, could I request you to explain in the chart that you explained in the treasury single account that is different from the treasury deposit facility? How are they different? We want to know what are the functions of these two, how are they different? And towards the IMF expert, I do agree with the fact that based on what we have heard from Ms. Boualuengkhin from Laos, I agree with the situation that she shared. We're still missing the integration with other IT infrastructure and also the engagement in the transaction processing with the banks. With that regard, I have a quick question here. If you could perhaps explain and exemplify the insufficient authority from the Treasury. Do we have to have like a special authority, or what kind of tools do we need to have, or cooperation that needs from the Treasury? So that's my question. Thank you.
We have actually two for Indonesia and one for IMF. So the first two questions refer to Indonesia. Please explain more in detail, and then we'll move on to the IMF question.
Okay, thank you for the question. Let's see by presentation. Slide 6 can show. Okay, how relation between central government and local government? Of course, maybe in each country has different connection. I mean that Indonesia local government as a free entity. So of course we have connection like fiscal balance taxation from central bank to central government to local government. And then if you talk about because I also mentioned about sovereign level. Of course, if you talk about only central level, of course we only consider the case in central government. But when we discuss about sovereign, we also consider the liquidity in local government and also other like subsidiaries as well. So that's why when we talk about local government, we provide instrument. Let's say, if local government has surplus of money, I mean that some will be transferred from central government to local government. But you can imagine that local government not ready yet to disburse this money to end beneficiaries because let's say commitment is still on progress. So that's why from this situation, because you can imagine that in Indonesian context, some of cash is provided from the issuance of government bonds. You can see that if we disburse this money to local government and then still stay in local government banks, it looks like less efficient in terms of sovereign. So which means that we create, maybe I will start to answer the second question about treasury deposit facilities. So that's why we provide this mechanism. If local government do not ready to disburse this money, so they can put voluntarily and non-voluntarily this excess of cash in our central government bank account. So you can imagine that, let's say we transfer one, actually local government has right to receive 100 million rupiahs, but they're not ready to disburse to beneficiaries. So we still can hold this money for a certain time, let's say 3 months or 1 month after they're ready, and then after they're ready, we disburse this money to local government at local government bank account. And then about support for local government as well. You said about does Indonesian issue treasury bills yet? No, actually, because we can place placement. Let's say not only to commercial banks, but also in the current regulation, we can support. Let's say if local government or maybe some institution get or set tasks from central government to support some program, so we can support the liquidity of this local government as well. Of course, how about the issue about risk management? I mean that maybe the quality, the healthiness of local government quite different, varies. So that's why we can use the amount of transfer from central government to local government as a collateral. I mean that if local government cannot pay what they borrow from central government, we can intercept, cut this transfer to local government. I think there's two kind relation between central government and local government in terms of liquidity support, and also when local government has a surplus of their liquidity. I think that's all from my question.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal. And for the next question from to Mr. Holger, can Mr. Holger?
So if I understand the question correctly, it's about the authority that the Treasury needs for cash management. I mean, one of the basic, I mean, first of all, I think, most governments would want to have a section on the Treasury powers and responsibilities in their PFM law or in a separate Treasury Act. On the Treasury single account, it's very important that all the accounts are known to the Treasury, that the Treasury authorizes opening of any accounts if they are needed. One of the issues that we often see is that the TSA is not completed because agencies and even line ministries don't want to put their money into the Treasury single account. It's not about using their budget money, but it's just about managing their cash centrally. So those kind of things do need to be authorized by law. And also on the forecasting side, of course, line ministries should be required to provide monthly forecasts. Usually it's monthly forecast of their cash needs. On the tools, I think rightly you say that FMIS is an important tool for getting up-to-date revenue and expenditure information. We do see in a lot of countries that there's still quite extensive use of cash advances, and cash advances are usually only settled after some time. So that leaves, first of it leaves idle cash in line ministries, but it also leads to a kind of uncertainty about how cash is actually spent by line ministries if cash advances are used expensively. So a good FMIS would allow immediate settlement of all expenditure transactions, and so that is why a good FMIS will be quite supportive for good forecasting and for good cash management. That's the comment I'd like to make. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Holger, for that answer. I hope that answers your question. Is there any other questions for our panelists? Yes, sir, right here. Please bring the mic.
Thank you. I have one question to Mr. Holger. I'm from Indonesia. So it is agreed by the monetary policy practice that the government cash balance in central banks is the dominant autonomous liquidity that should be managed by the central bank. But even in the developed countries, they have two different kind of agreement between the cash management and the central banks. If we see that in the countries like European Union, so there were most of the cash management would be forced to invest their cash balance in the market. But while in the United States, even the United States currently mostly deposit their cash in the central bank. So my one question is, so what is the factors that should be considered when we would like to design the collaborations and coordinations between cash management and central bank? That would be my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Holger.
Well, I mean, the separation of cash management, the separation of cash management and monetary policy, we think is important. They should not be kind of mingled together, and that's why we think that once the capacity is there, the technical capacity is there in government treasuries to manage the government's cash, that function should be allocated to the treasury. But of course, in many developing countries where that capacity is not there, you see that the central bank uses the cash reserves and manages it as part of its overall balance sheet. And then, hopefully the government receives some benefit of the cash balance through the profit retention from the central bank. But that's unclear. So we say that if you are maintaining a large cash balance at the central bank, then you're basically subsidizing to a certain extent the central bank, right? And to have a clear separation of the monetary function and the treasury function, we think that the cash balance should be managed as efficiently by the government as possible. Now, central banks are sometimes a bit upset, by the introduction of, and I think Faisal can attest to that, when governments start to do cash management, because they like the situation of having this large cash balance on their balance sheet. But I think eventually they will see the benefit of having a more stable cash balance that actually facilitates their bank liquidity management, because the biggest shock to bank liquidity is often the ins and outs in the government's TSA. If you have massive inflows for revenue collection, if you have massive outflows for expenditure, that will affect bank liquidity, and the central bank usually has to accommodate that. If the cash manager is doing that kind of management, it will benefit and stabilize monetary conditions a lot. So we think actually the separation of these two functions is preferable once the capacity in government treasuries is there.
Thank you, Mr. Holger. Is anyone else have question? Maybe our panelists on stage here would like anything to add to that? Yep. Mr. Faisal?
Yeah, I think this Indonesian face some challenges. One is coordination with central bank, but of course we discussed with IMF how we can increase the understanding about this position, and then let's say, like I said before, that when we apply support commercial bank when COVID-19 pandemic, it also we check about the implication if we put huge money in the market related to or inflation as well. So we can assess the risk of displacement, and we still discuss about central bank. I think we can find that the best coordination, and then of course like Mr. Holger mentioned that if we can, in line with the central bank policy, the placement of government in the market will support this strategy as well from the central bank. I think that's from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, Mr. Faisal, for adding on to that comment. Is there any other question? And Madam Boualuengkhin, do you like something to add to no? Okay. Anyone else? Any participants would like to ask? Yes, sir, right here in front.
Thank you, moderator and panelists. We had not so problem with the treasury central account, but we have the problem to manage the not the allocation, the grant or the transfer payment we giving to our statutory body or the government agency. Some of this the element of the practice, the parking. I mean, they put on the grant into the fixed deposit. Whereby when we want to get the allocation to give to them, we have to get from the market at least 6% or more. And but when they are received by our grant, they invest in a fixed deposit or another instrument. And very, we have a negative carry on that. So maybe I would like to ask MF, is any best practice how you want to try to reduce that? I think automating the cash management on that particular case.
Thank you. That last question was to IMF, Mr. Holger.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I'm not 100% sure what the question was, but you know the interest rates on cash management instruments. Can you hear me, or am I frozen out? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Okay. The instruments on cash management instruments can of course be problematic, especially in the startup phase of market development, right? That actually the interest rates that you can get on term deposits are perhaps much lower than you would think. And that you know the T-bill issuance is more expensive than expected, and we see that especially in markets that are just starting to be developed, right? And so I think the market development strategy for the money market is very important. It's Pafazal said, you know, we're trying to develop a yield curve. I think that's an important issue, but you know, it's usually better to start with a single instrument, right? To build some liquidity in that instrument before trying to get the whole instrument, the whole yield curve populated, because otherwise you might not develop enough market liquidity and interest of banks and also insurance companies to really invest and participate in that market. So I think the differences in yields, you know, can normalize for the government once the market develops further. But perhaps Pafazal can discuss further about their experience, the Indonesian experience on this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Holger. Hope that answered your question. Is there anyone else who would like to add? Mr. Faisal, would you like to add?
Okay, I would like to answer from different perspective from our colleagues from Malaysia, because you said about when you need receive some money from government and then put placement or their money in, let's say, try to look for the best remuneration. And some cases, they also buy government bond as well. So that's why in Indonesia perspective, that's why in our next development, we try to see all as sovereign. I mean that you can imagine that we issued government bond, and then we have money with cost as well, and then we disburse to some entities, and then because they're not ready to disburse yet for let's say the project or and beneficiaries, they put this money to buy government as well. I think that's not a good efficient in all system. So that's why when we introduce like treasury deposit facilities and etc., actually we try to, let's say, to adapt just in time transaction. Actually, when they need for the project, yes, we will disburse. Yeah, but when they do not need, I mean, they still takes time for the readers of the project, keep this money first in the central bank as well. I think that's from my perspective. Have to create efficient sovereign liquidity management. I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faisal. Hopefully that answers some of your questions and queries. Anyone else have any more questions? Madam Anton from Lao PDR, as the Director General of the Treasury Department, have some questions.
Thank you. I do have a question. Either Indonesia or other countries, and IMF expert would like to chime in. Well, as we have heard from the IMF expert, that active cash management, this active cash management, this is something new that we are learning here. We must ensure that we will be able to make the payment, and management of our revenue must be ensured. We need to have source of cash in order to accommodate our payment. But I'm interested in this part that you said that the issuance of like daily, weekly, quarterly bills. Lao National Treasury has initiative to do it, but currently we only issue, as Madam Boualuengkhin mentioned, only the one-year bill, the short-term bill. But in terms of the long-term bill, it will be the Department of Public Debt Management under the Ministry of Finance to issue those bonds. But how do we initiate this if we want? That's what I'm asking. If we want to issue this one-year T-bill approved by the National Assembly that approved the Ministry of Finance to mobilize resources, but in reality, we have not been able to mobilize the resources that we want. But we have the efforts. We want to mobilize our clients, like the financial institution, to purchase our treasury bills. But I want to learn, how do you start that short-term bills, weekly bills, monthly bills, or even quarterly bill, till a bill with 3 months terms? How do we start? Even this short-term one-year bill, we have not been able to basically attract the market. Usually our buyers, our clients are existing clients, but we try to mobilize more clients to purchase our T-bills. But the challenge is that we are afraid that for the short-term bill, we might not be able to pay the yield in a timely fashion. So that's the first question. The second question I want to ask either the IMF expert in Indonesia regarding the management of the bank accounts of your spending unit or budget units. We want to learn from you, how do you manage the deposit account of your budget units where they generate technical revenue? But Boualuengkhin, my colleague, mentioned that we try to close account, but there are accounts that are outside of the treasury system that we may not be able to capture and put it in our treasury system. Sometimes the deposit outside of the treasury system, we never know. They don't put under the name of that organization. The question is, how do we tackle this issue or manage this issue? We have just started undertaking the TSA, the Treasury Single Account. We want to consolidate everything here. I'm not so sure if my questions are clear here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May I consolidate and about Madam Director General of the Treasury Department of Laos question. The first question is to the IMF, if I'm correct. But regarding issuing the short-term treasury bills, whether it's daily, monthly, or quarterly bills, and how do you start? And for the second question to Indonesia, how to manage the TSA or spending budget units, and how do we tackle some of the issues that have been raised that mentioned by Madame Boualuengkhin that we have faced here in Lao PDR. I would like to start off with Mr. Holger, please, for the first question.
Well, I mean, your question reminds me very much of experience I had with the Chinese Treasury many years ago. They were very enthusiastic that they were going to do active cash management, and then the next year I came back and they had issued T-bills, but in the same amount every quarter, and of course that is just financing. It doesn't really influence the size, the variability of your TSA balance. It just raises the amount. So the most important thing is to kind of start issuing different amounts for different periods. And many countries, and of course this needs to be discussed with your central bank and with your debt management office, but many countries start with issuance of 3 months paper, and they issue varying amounts depending on how much cash they actually need in the upcoming quarter. So it's not about issuing 10 different maturities, 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year. I would focus on one maturity, can be 1 year, but varying the amounts every quarter. So issuing every quarter, and that's what we call rough tuning, right? This will only dampen the variability in your TSA to some extent, but that's already a benefit. And you will see that the average amount that you need in the cash balance will be reduced by rough tuning. So you already make savings in your net financing of the cash balance. But you have to start varying the amounts of issuance relative to your forecast with an adequate safety margin if you are not very sure about your forecast. But that's basically the answer. So I'll leave the second question to my colleague.
Mr. Faisal?
Okay, thank you for the second question about the management of bank account. Of course, it is part of the pillar of the cash management, how we manage bank account. And about your question, how we deal with bank account under line ministries or spending units, all right? So actually, when we manage bank account, of course, Indonesian experience, we have agreement with some commercial bank, particularly state-owned banks, which mean that all spending units, line ministries, when they open bank account, should in the selected banks, right? And then, of course, when they issued, they should report to Treasury, and it will monitor by our system. You can imagine that, let's say, so many spending units across the countries. We can see how many bank accounts available and how much amount of money in each bank account as well. And then that's the first stage. And of course, we has agreement with commercial bank. That's depend on, I mean that it is not effective, let's say, if I swap every day cash from this bank account in commercial bank to central bank. So we have agreement that they should give us some remuneration, not as a giro, but like some deposit in daily. I mean that Indonesian case they provide approximately until 3% of our cash balance each day in every bank account. So regularly, monthly, commercial bank transfers the remuneration to our account and central bank. So Lai Ministry still can do their activities 24 hours in our system, but we can still monitor the cash balance and then get the remuneration from the idle cash in special bank account across the country. I think that's from my question. Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Faisal. Thank you for the participant. Any other questions? I think any more questions? If not, then I would like to allow to summarize today's session, and of course, for today's session, we've seen opposite sides of the spectrum between ASEAN countries, especially between Laos and Indonesia, in the way how we manage the cash flow or cash management in the treasury. And of course, we also heard about from international practices from the representative from IMF, Mr. Hogar, was giving us some quite incentive views on how the international system managed the cash flow. And for this today's session, and in addition to exchanging ideas and learn from ASEAN member country colleagues and brainstorm and analyze issues, we have come up with hopefully with some solutions to some of the issues that of our concern that we've had regarding the government cash management for sustainable development. Especially I'd like to thank our three representatives, Madam Boualuengkhin from Lao PDR, Mr. Pfizer from Indonesia, and Mr. Hogar from IMF, who joined us here online, for giving us some of your insights and participating in this seminar today. We'd like to thank you once again. Thank you, participants, and I'd like to hand over to our MC for the closing.
Thank you very much for our speaker, Madam Boualuengkhin, Douangsavanh, Mr. Mu Faso Amesh, and Mr. Hoke Wen Eden. To our moderator, Mr. Supason Silapes, for the monitoring for this discussion. Please give big allow the applause for our description today. Excellency, discussion to delegation. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we had to the productive and inspiring time for discuss together. But now it's time for us to the end of the seminar on Treasury seminar on the optimizing government cash manager to sustainable development. On behalf of the host and committee, we would like to end our appreciation to all for the support and participants today. We wish you the safe journey back to your home country. If you could spare some time, please enjoy with beautiful sightseeing in Luang Prabang, Heritage City. Thank you.